Welcome back. Let's mix it up on the day's other headlines. A new debate about words and deeds on the far right and some tough questions about the U.S. plan for Iran's nuclear program. But we begin with a fight over the Tea Party and the legacy of the Oklahoma City bombing on its anniversary today. Survivors and victims, or I should say victims' relatives, gathered today at the memorial site to remember the 168 people killed in that attack, which happened 15 years ago today. This weekend, former President Bill Clinton sparked a fierce exchange with Rush Limbaugh after he said extremist rhetoric from groups like the Tea Party can provoke the sort of extremist action that led to the bombings. Take a listen.
The words we use really do matter because there's this vast echo chamber. And they go across space, and they fall on the serious and the delirious alike.
With this comment, you have just set the stage for violence in this country. Any future acts of violence are on your shoulders, Mr. Clinton.
Do you have any response?
It doesn't make any sense. I just think we all have to be careful. We ought to remember after Oklahoma City, we learned something about the difference in disagreement and demonization.
Well, conservative radio hosts certainly do seem to talk about violence an awful lot, even if, say they want peaceful resistance. Here's Glenn Beck, for instance, on his radio show this morning.
This country, I think, is going to be brought down into violence. I hope to God not, I pray not. It will be possibly the end of the republic.
Here to mix it up is our panel editorial writer for The Washington Post, Jonathan Capehart, and editorial page editor for The Washington Examiner, Mark Tapscott. Jonathan, no better way to generate ratings than to scare the living crap out of people or provoke them with hot women wearing very little clothing, but that's a conversation for a different channel on a different day. Political cable loves good and incendiary rhetoric to jack the ratings and boost the money that is collected. But at what point does the responsibility for the words actually go back to the speaker?
Well, hopefully it won't happen when some unstable person actually puts into action some of the incendiary rhetoric. I think President Clinton is absolutely right. We did learn something after Oklahoma City, that words do have consequences. I wrote a piece for our Postpartisan blog entitled The Scary Tea Party after reading a very lengthy story in the New York Times about the extreme far right groups that have attached themselves to the Tea Party movement. And as I read the piece, I was taken back to this day in 1995 when we were in the middle of talking about militias and lots of rhetoric coming out of Capitol Hill about black helicopters and government taking over people's lives and taking their money and things. And that disappeared after the Oklahoma City bombing. And here we are again dealing with birthers and 10th Amendment folks and the rise of militias again in the age of Obama.
Considering the magnitude of the theft and the lack of investigation with banking, lots of room for debate about the quality of the legislative process with health care, lots of backroom deals, Mark. I could go down a list here. There's plenty to be fearful of and angry about in this country. What do you view as the healthy channel for that anger, that fear, if you will, as it pertains to our political dialogue?
You know, Dylan, I was born and raised in Oklahoma City, so this day has a particular resonance for me. I agree absolutely with Jonathan and his colleague at the Washington Post, E.J. Dionne, and President Clinton. We need to put a stop to this kind of rhetoric, and I'll tell you the way we're going to do it. We're going to bring back the Alien and Sedition Act and make it a crime to say things that are critical of our government. That's the obvious solution, and in fact, we ought to have a star chamber to prosecute it like Elizabeth I did, and I would nominate Jonathan and EJ to be the chief members of that star chamber to decide who.
Mark.
That is exactly the point. That is exactly the point. If you are going to let the government decide what criticism is permissible and what is not, you're back to the star chambers.
No one's saying that, Mark. We're just saying that the level of rhetoric that's spiked in this country is dangerous and fearful.
And Jonathan, you cannot prove a nexus between the words of anybody on the right or the left, for that matter, and specific violent acts. If you can, then who are you going to allow to define that nexus?
I'm sorry, Mark, but I don't think I want to get to the point where there actually is evidence of violent actions due to violent rhetoric coming from people.
Now you're evading the issue, because the issue is who's going to decide, the government or somebody else, what is permissible speech and what's not.
I'm actually reacting to you saying, is there any direct evidence? And I'm saying I don't want us as a person and as a republic to get to that point.
Sure, neither do I. But Jonathan, tell me,
we're agreed.
Who should define what is permissible speech and what is not?
I mean, we're not talking about what is permissible speech.
That is exactly the issue here.
Look, Mark, you can say what you want. I'm not trying to stop someone from saying something, but I will not give up my ability to say that what someone is saying is dangerous.
But would you stop somebody from saying something that you or EJD on or me decides is going to incite violence?
People are saying what they're saying, and I am reacting to it. I'm not saying that they should that they're not allowed to say it, and that's what you're trying to say.
Now, see, Jonathan, this is the problem. You guys on the left, you want to make the argument that the Tea Party is leading to violence.
You're wrong,
Mark.
Mark, you're wrong. I'm sorry. I've written many things about the Tea Party. You can ask EJ yourself, but I've written many things about the Tea Party, and I've made it very clear that the extreme elements, far-right elements of the Tea Party movement are damaging real legitimate concerns that people have about deficits and budgets and things like that.
That's not what Bill Clinton said.
Mark,
Bill Clinton
I'm responding to something you said about me, not about Bill Clinton. If you want to have a discussion with Bill Clinton, give him a call.
That was a very good mix-it-up, however, gentlemen. Let's move on to another equally thorny issue. Defense Secretary Robert Gates downplaying a leaked memo in which he wrote that the U.S. does not have a long-term plan to curb Iran's nuclear program. The memo was written to the White House. Details were published in the New York Times on Sunday. Gates says the memo was meant to contribute to the planning process, not to sound the alarm, though one senior official said it was, quote, a wake-up call. My goodness me, if we need a wake-up call on Iran at this point, somebody stop feeding our politicians sleeping pills, Jonathan. Where do we stand? And what is your understanding, anyway, of where our government stands relative not only to Iran, but Iran in the context of its relationship as a drug dealer, an arms dealer with Russia, as an oil and money dealer with China, and as an explicit and existential threat to Israel?
Look, I think that there's something strange going on here, that this memo has come out. The secretary has already backpedaled, saying that the context is all wrong. Mark Amender at the Atlantic has a piece on their site talking about you have to look at the fact that, of course, the United States has plans and contingency plans out there, that what Gates in this memo was probably trying to do was to push along some political will to act on some of those contingency plans. Yeah. I think it would be a dereliction of duty if we were to find out now, today, 2010, that the United States does not have any kind of planning for what to do about Iran and its nukes or potential nukes.
Mark, is the U.S. plan with Iran Israel?
Let's hope not, because in the final analysis, what happens with the Iran nuclear issue is probably going to be decided by what we do or don't do. Jonathan makes an excellent point here. If we don't have contingency plans for whatever might happen now, we really are in trouble. And in fact, Admiral, the Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, said earlier today that they plan for these kinds of contingencies all the time. So I think that memo was probably overstated by whoever interpreted it.
Yeah. All right, listen, if we can just have a vestige of competency across the board around here, I'm sure it would be welcome to every voter and citizen in this country. Mark, Jonathan, a pleasure.